Okay, you do that.
We talk about the Los Angeles Chargers.
Let me know how it goes.
Do you want to read off the Chargers picks?
Once it comes on the screen, sure. There we go. Pick number 1, Quentin Johnston, wide receiver from TCU. Second round, Tuli Tuipulotu, the edge rusher from USC. Third round, Dan Henley, the Washington State linebacker. Fourth round, Darius Davis, wide receiver from TCU, the other wide receiver from TCU. Fifth round, did they just have one pick in every round? They just did it like just vanilla drafting.
The Chiefs, like the Chiefs
yeah.
did.
Round 5, Jordan McFadden, the tackle from Clemson. Round 6, Scott Matlock, defensive tackle from Boise State. And their round 7 pick, Max Duggan, the TCU quarterback. Because you've already drafted his receivers, you might as well bring the quarterback in.
I mixed up my note here from the press conferences. It was Darius Davis from TCU who was described as a quote-unquote dual returner for the Chargers. So that's who they got. I mean, Turner, though, the receiver for the Raiders, is still going to be – he's going to be like a yak gimmick type of guy, return ability and all that stuff. Same idea, though. But, yeah, they got 3 TCU players. 43% of their draft was TCU. Max Duggan.
Including the quarterback.
Darius Davis and Quentin Johnston.
I don't really understand why you draft Max Duggan, but okay.
So we had talked quite a bit about the Chargers' need for speed this offseason, and they did attack that with the 2 TCU wide receivers for sure.
Yeah.
Quentin Johnston, look, I mentioned we talked about it, the draft recap show, which is still up there, night 1 recap. A lot of good fits and a lot of receivers who step into number 3 roles. Jackson Smith and Jigba in Seattle, Zay Flowers with the Baltimore Ravens probably. But Quentin Johnston coming in now as a complement to Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, I love this. You know, for all of the flaws of Quentin Johnston maybe not winning enough down the field, his ball skills and all that fun stuff, he is quick and fast for a big guy. Big, strong, fast is what Tom Telesco kept reiterating at his press conference. And Johnston, he grew on me more throughout the process when I wasn't scouting him directly. When I was looking at Julius Brents, who went in the second round, and everybody's lauding the Julius Brents pick by the Colts because he's long and athletic and all that stuff, the Kansas State corner. Quentin Johnston torched him pretty consistently when they played. So Johnston can win on slants, he can win down the field, play to his strengths, and it's a big body target who's pretty fast and probably won't drop 12% of his targets consistently throughout his career. So I think it's a nice fit for what the Chargers already have on offense.
Yeah, I mean, I took the other side out of that matchup. It was more that's why I didn't love Julius Brents more than that's why I started to like Quentin Johnston more.
Yeah, both can be true.
Johnston, I think, I mean, he went kind of where I thought he should go. Like, we pushed back a lot on Quentin Johnston over the process, but it started because he was Mike Renner's number 1 wide receiver and a guy that was being talked about as, well, will he go number 12 to Houston, or is he a top 10 type of wide receiver? And you're like, no, he isn't. But when you do the wide receiver rankings and you're like, I can't drop him that far. Like, I don't like him particularly as a prospect, but I can only really drop him below 2 guys before I run out of players where I think it's fair. The things that he's good at, like that size, that speed, that ability to catch a short pass, turn up field and make a big play out of it, that is rare. It's not easy to find that kind of skill set. So even if he's never going to have great hands, or even if he's never going to be a good at the catch kind of receiver, there's still a role for it in the offense. And I think in the 20s is about where that should go, particularly in this draft. The only concern would be, as Chris mentioned on draft night, there are 2 wide receivers that are ahead of him on the depth chart. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen have a pretty extensive injury history at this point each. If one of those goes down, if both of them go down, and all of a sudden Quentin Johnston is your number 1 wide receiver or has to be a much bigger part of the offense than you anticipate right now, then I think you might have some issues. But adding him to that group as the number 3 is a great fit.
Yeah, I mean, on paper it looks awesome if Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are healthy. Yeah, I mean, if Quentin Johnston has to be fed more targets and be a bigger, high volume player, yeah, it's more challenging. And I know it's appealing to have a big body and you say, red zone and all that stuff. We'll see what happens with Quentin Johnston, but theoretically, when you are trying to match up defensively in the red zone with Quentin Johnston, with Mike Williams, Donald Parham, 6'8" tight end, Chargers have some options there, right? So they're taking the idea that they have to build around Justin Herbert. I think Telesco did mention that a few times. He did cite also, as most most evaluators are, they trust their board, they're not picking needs and all that stuff. But they're also knowing, hey, when we have 3 and 4 legitimate receivers and pass catchers for our quarterback, that's how you win in today's NFL. So I love the fact that they went that route with Johnston, where I do think that the big play upside is there. It was also a note during the press conference that they said, hey, a lot of people cited his hands as an issue. He said, yeah, he caught he took drop rate and kind of inverted it, Telesco. He said, yeah, I think he caught 88% of his passes or something to that effect of catchable balls. And he's like, yeah, that needs to improve. Everybody needs to improve. So he acknowledged the drop rate, the hands issues, probably used we had him with 12% drops. He said 88% catch rate. So, yeah, I mean, that does need to get better, but we've also talked about sometimes guys have like a 5% drop rate one season and then it's 15 the next season. Like, you don't overrate the drops. The bigger issue with Quentin Johnston is, why does he not dominate at the catch point consistently? You're not getting a Mike Williams, right? He's Mike Williams type of size, but Mike Williams wins 50-60% of those balls, where Quentin Johnston in college was winning 30% of those.
Renner's theory is also pretty interesting, that Max Duggan, his quarterback, I mean, you hear throws a catchable ball a lot, which is generally just a made-up bullshitty term. But there are guys that do not throw catchable balls, like these guys that throw these knuckleball, the absolute antithesis of spirals, right? This weird sort of thing that's coming at you at a weird angle, not necessarily in a straight line, and you have to think about how you're going to catch it. You can't just automatically pluck it out of the sky without thinking, because it's coming the way it normally comes. It's coming at a slightly off angle, and you need to maneuver your hand slightly. I'm not saying he's responsible for all of Quentin Johnston's struggles at the catch point. I am saying it's probably a factor that Max Duggan has not helped, and in fact has hindered how it looks like Quentin Johnston catches the football. And as soon as you put him next to a guy that's actually throwing a tight spiral every single play, he probably looks better.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something to that. Hopefully he doesn't get to see Max Duggan again. He is their 7th-round pick here for the Chargers. We'll see him in the preseason, most likely, but hopefully Justin Herbert is staying healthy, and we get to see that combination. So definitely interested in what's going on at receiver. The 2 day 2 picks, Tuli Tuipulotu out of USC, Diane Henley, another couple interesting prospects, right? The USC guy, Tuli, Brandon Staley did the day 2 press conference, or the one that I listened to. He was raving about him and his versatility. Could play the edge, could play on the interior, very productive player, and he's also only 20 years old.
Which is, I quite like Tuipulotu, or at least I like him the most of the beige pass rushers in the middle of this draft. I will say, though, he might have the most extreme version of the list size not matching up to the real size. We talked about Rashee Rice being listed at like 6'2", 220 or whatever it was, and then being 6'1", 204. Tuipulotu was listed at 6'4", 290 pounds, and actually measured...
Just misinformation.
6'3", so he's lost an inch, and 266 pounds. So 24 pounds lighter than he was supposed to be. Which, when you're talking about like tweener defensive linemen, you're no longer a tweener at that size. You're just an edge rusher.
He's just an edge. I mean, I do need to dig in further. I don't know if he pushed 290. He never looked like 290.
No.
I wonder if he pushed in the 280s.
Because he did.
At some point.
I mean, I agree with the tape that he did look like a guy that can play inside and outside and pretty much anywhere along the defensive line. But if he is just 266, and we're not talking about a guy that gets anywhere near 280, 290, 270, hell... I mean, you're not a guy that plays inside, at least not in any situation outside of like obvious pass rushing downs where it doesn't matter that you're only 260.
He's also big enough to at least rush from the interior on 3rd down. So there is a world where it could be Tuli on the interior with Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack on the edge. You've got stunts and games and all that stuff that you can do. Big fan of rolling 3 and 4 deep with good edge rushers, right? So that makes a ton of sense. Again, Staley referenced his ability to play that 4 technique, head up on the tackle at USC, and how he played the run and was rugged and tough, and as far as shedding blocks and everything. So that's a good fit for the Chargers. Henley will play pure linebacker for the Chargers. Back up Eric Kendricks, Kenneth Murray. They just denied Kenneth Murray's 5th-year option, so it looks like Henley probably takes over for Kenneth Murray at least in 2024 at the earliest. Developmental wide receiver. He's a linebacker who used to play receiver. Really, really fast. He's an older prospect, but still somewhat young at the linebacker position, but a really good athlete to work with.
Yeah, I like that pick. I mean, I'm I like bringing in a young, talented, athletic linebacker that Eric Kendricks can help bring along as well, along with Kenneth Murray, who they already have there.
And even though they only cited Darius Davis and his 4.36 speed as a return guy first, I mean, we've seen Herbert have success with just, whether it was Jalen Guyton, hey, fast guy, run fast as my number 4 receiver.
He's also
that's a position on NFL teams, the designated deep threat for 10 plays a game. Darius Davis could potentially do some of that.
Sure. He's also the only receiver on the roster, I think, that is small and shifty and quick. Like the kind of dinky receiver that most teams have somewhere as a gimmick threat. All the receivers for the Chargers are these giants. So, maybe he can come in and be that short, quick, shifty guy there's a role for that. Like there's a gimmick gig somewhere for that.
And the other guy I just wanted to highlight, Jordan McFadden from Clemson. I didn't highlight him enough during the process. He might be, I think, along with Blake Freeland from BYU. I'm going to call those two the best developmental offensive linemen in the draft. Jordan McFadden could be another Jamari Sawyer. And McFadden is fascinating because he played at a really high level at Clemson, both tackle spots, right and left, at 6'2". And so when you see 6'2", it's like immediately he's got to be a guard. But he has 34-inch arms, so he at least has tackle length and all that stuff. Telesco called him a tackle and a guard, so they're not just pigeonholing him. Honestly think that he could compete for starting right tackle snaps with, depending on what they do with Jamari Sawyer.
Yeah.
If they keep Sawyer at guard or move him to guard, Trey Pipkins at right tackle, I really think Jordan McFadden can compete as a starting right tackle as a 5th-round pick. If not this year, then next year. I think he could be the best developmental tackle prospect in the draft class.
The Chargers appear to be showing a disregard for sort of traditional cookie-cutter measurable stereotypes for the offensive line. You've got Jamari Sawyer, who is built like a guard.
Yeah.
Injury forced it, but he was playing left tackle last year and doing pretty well for them when Rashawn Slater went down. You've got Rashawn Slater himself, who has 33-inch arms, which are right on that cutoff of NFL desirable measurables from an offensive tackle standpoint. They drafted him at the top of the draft, in their first round, and he's an amazing left tackle right away. And then you have a guy like this who is a weird body type, 6'2", but long. What do you do with that? So at least through 3 players, they look like they don't really care what your measurables are if you've shown the tape to play tackle or guard or whatever it is.
So Chargers draft, anything else? Max Duggan goes late. Again, 3 out of 7 players coming out of TCU. I like McFadden, though, in round 5. A- over at PFF.com for the Chargers. Thought it was solid. One of the A's up there.
Not a lot of undrafted free agents I love from the Wests. I haven't found a ton of players that I'm big on.
Yeah, why is that? Anybody good here? The Chargers? I'm looking. Jared Clark, the nose tackle out of Coastal Carolina. He's 330 pounds. He could they need any sort of defensive tackle who could stop the run.
It's interesting that they didn't draft a running back. Remember, the Austin Eckler wants out, wants to be traded, unhappy with his contract. They were a landing spot for Bijan Robinson back when we thought Bijan might last to the 20s.
Yeah.
Jahmyr Gibbs was a late push for them when we thought Jahmyr Gibbs might make it to the 20s. They didn't draft one at all. They didn't take a running back.
Man, they could have been in the they should have traded for DeAndre Swift and just stitch it together. Yeah, we'll see if Austin Eckler ends up. I mean, if Eckler's still there, they're in pretty good shape. If they do end up trading him and he's that upset,
they brought in a couple
as
undrafted free agents. But, I mean, just a notable point that they did not, what we thought was one of their bigger area of needs, they didn't even touch it in the draft.
The other part, too, is we talked about the Cowboys as a multiple-year, when are they going to get the big run-stopping nose tackle? We've talked about the same with the Chargers. All they got was Scott Matlock out of Boise State in the 6th. So they're rolling again this season as of right now with the same guys as last year. Their free agent signings last year, Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson, could probably still use some more help up front as we head into the season. So.